Yeah, thank you all so much for coming. I would make a reference to the last talk, but unfortunately I couldn't understand it, so I can't say anything good about it. But so I'm here to kind of talk to you a little bit about privacy and data and trust. And kind of what I'm working on, and for a lot of people, privacy is a really important issue. But we see it, we're kind of losing privacy, but we also see that as an opportunity. So first, what I'm going to talk about is kind of a little bit quick history of privacy, where we're at, and then talk about how that lack of privacy is actually an opportunity for us. So first, if you will, imagine back to me to kind of the first society of human beings and what was privacy like for them. Well, if you're living in a cave and you're living in a hut with a bunch of people, there's probably not a ton of privacy. You know, you're working together. If Tom comes home with the huge mammoth, everybody knows that Tom killed a mammoth, right? So kind of there's a lack of privacy, but people living together and working together also collaborated a lot. The only reason that people could kill these mammoths is because they were working together. So there's a lack of privacy, but there's also, because you knew all your neighbors and you knew you could trust them, there was a lot of cool things that people were able to do. But as kind of societies moved on in technology, it has allowed us to live in larger groups of people. There's also been more privacy, right? Because if you can live in a city with 50,000 people, 500,000 people, 5 million people, all of a sudden, your next door neighbor doesn't necessarily know who you are. You can live in a big apartment building and never meet anyone besides maybe the guy you go to buy your groceries from, or whoever you pay your bills to. So in that sense, it's allowed a lot more privacy for people and a lot of freedom. We can move around kind of wherever we want, and nobody's, especially in the past 100 years. But now technology is kind of taking that to a next step, but now besides getting more privacy, we're actually kind of losing a little bit of privacy. And so the internet is kind of number one reason, I guess you would say, for that, is because people are putting so much data on the internet, and there's Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Google, emails. Basically, for a lot of people, their whole online life is digitized in the internet. And so, if you want to find out something about someone, so Stefan, for example, I said, hey, who is this guy? He asked me to do a TED Talk. Who is this? So luckily there's a tool called Reportive, and so it's right in your email. Literally all I did was type in his email address, and here comes a nice picture of him. And so that's great for me, because now I know who Stefan is. But for a lot of people, it's kind of a question of, okay, this is a little weird, right? Like, I typed in a couple of letters, and all of a sudden I have a picture, and I know exactly where I can look to find this guy. And easily accessible. It's not like you have to be a detective or a super sleuth to figure this out. It's a Gmail extension. And so again, it's good for me, but it's also a little questionable whether people want this information easily accessible. Another one of my tools that I use in Gmail, another extension I talk about is Yesware. So this is great if you're a salesperson, because you can see whether people are opening your emails. What it does is it puts a little image in your email, and when someone opens that email, it loads the image, and you all of a sudden know, oh my gosh, they read my email, great. I'm prospecting, but it says, okay, the client, the device, exactly what time. I could see you open this email in Concord, Massachusetts at 12 o'clock p.m. on June 7th, and luckily this is my co-founder, Nam, who's in the audience, so not violating any of his privacy. But it's good, because again, I know who's opening my emails and who I should send more to, but it's a little weird of maybe too much information easily accessible. And so and you can see it's not just Gmail extensions either. It's so Reddit is a very popular site on the internet. It's known as the front page of the internet. A lot of people you can go there, make an account, post stuff, and people will upvote, downvote, and kind of it's a general news source, and you can post whatever you want. And Reddit's supposed to be anonymous, so you just sign up with an email, make a profile, and that's that. And kind of is divided into these different subgroups or sub-forums of subreddits, as they're called. And so with this anonymity that you get on Reddit, people can kind of do a more questionable things. So there was one called Jailbait. There was a forum named that, and people would post pictures of underage girls, and a lot of people were like, nah, we don't like this. But Reddit said, hey, we believe in freedom of speech and anonymity, so kind of allowed to succeed. But actually just recently, a news magazine called Gawker kind of unmasked the guy who made this jailbait subreddit. And they said, oh, I figured out who you are. I wrote this whole big news article about kind of the questionable effects of this, and this guy got fired from his job. So article was posted on a weekend. On Monday, he said, don't come back. So again, a place that's maybe supposed to be private and you're supposed to kind of have a mask that you can put on is actually not so private. And so again, maybe that's good because a lot of people don't like those pictures, but it's also we're losing this idea of privacy of a space. And again, just one more example I want to talk about quickly here is 4chan, so another supposedly anonymous online forum. And this is notorious for being even worse than Reddit. You know, people just post, you would never show anything you find on 4chan to your mom. And so someone posted a video of two kids who were beating up this cat. It was a poor cat. They were just abusing it. And so the people at 4chan got quite mad and said, this is ridiculous. So within 24 hours, just based on a YouTube video, they had figured out who the two kids were, exactly where they lived. They had sent the police there, and so the police rescued this cat. But it's all based on just a video online. And so in general, I think, you know, it's questionable, you know, where exactly you go on the internet, how much privacy there is. But in my mind, there's a general sense of growing that, you know, the privacy is kind of it's already lost in some senses for a lot of people if you choose to live in the online world. So what we can do is we could fight that privacy, and I think that's something really important. There should always be, you know, whether for political reasons or personal reasons, a space on the internet where you can say whatever you want and no one will know who you are. And so kind of, you know, the EU has really been in the news lately a lot as well for fighting for that against Google's privacy policies or everyone's privacy policies. Hey, Facebook, we can't auto tag people. You know, you got to add some aspect of privacy. So I think that's really important, but I also think that, you know, you just can't stop the flow of information. And I think that's something that as more and more new technologies are developed and more of our online life is online, that it's really going to be tough to I think those places should exist, but I think it's going to be tough for the average person to kind of say, hey, everywhere I go on the internet, no one knows what I'm doing. So that's bad, but it's also maybe an opportunity in that a lot of your data is on there. So what if we started thinking, okay, instead of trying to hide this data, what could we do with this data? What are good things about having this data there? And one thing that I think a lot of people support is this idea of transparency. So maybe you don't think of that as a person, but what you do think of transparency is government, right? Everyone wants to know, what is the government doing with my money? You know, who's doing what laws are being passed? We really have been pushing for a lot of transparency in government. I think in general, people agree that's a really good thing of knowing what's going on in your government. And another aspect, and another place where we think transparency is good is corporations, right? You think, oh, this huge corporation, what are they doing? And if you're transparent, you say this is for shareholders or for every person, the idea of maybe turning, instead of a money bags, into a corporation who's doing something really positive in the world and enabling a lot of really great things going on, if you can just see what those things are. So if we can think of transparency, it leads to trust, is this idea of if data is out there, if you know what's going on, is you can trust things. You can trust your government, you can trust your corporations. And so if we take that one step further and go back to, okay, personal data, what we can do is build trust between people. And so that's kind of instead of thinking of, oh, I don't want this guy knowing about me, well, if this guy does know about me, then maybe he trusts me. And so what can we do with trust between two people? And so I think in general, trust empowers people. If you can kind of present yourself as a trustworthy person, it allows you to do a lot of things. So one maybe kind of example is you wouldn't think of as first as eBay. So eBay is I think it's a great place, you know, if you have extra stuff that you can just go sell it and get rid of it and make some money. But if you think about why was eBay able to succeed, is because if you're sending something across the country or across the ocean, you have to know that you're going to get your money. And if you're sending your money to some random guy somewhere, you have to know that you're going to get the product that you want. And so in general, marketplaces are kind of built upon this idea of trust. And Airbnb is a newer example of trust between two people, is that it's a site where if you have an extra room in your house, or you're going on vacation, you could rent that room out to a traveler or any person who's coming. So that's kind of a way of, instead of going to stay at a hotel, I could make money with the extra space in my room. I get to meet someone really cool, and this guy has a cheaper place to stay. But the whole idea of Airbnb is you don't want a stranger, you don't want a serial killer coming to your house. And so kind of these marketplaces are really built on the idea of trust and knowing who the person that you're interacting with is. And these are just the beginning, actually. There's a new Airbnb for everything. There's an Airbnb to find your dog sitter. There's an Airbnb to find babysitter. There's peer-to-peer lending. So instead of going to a bank, I could just borrow some money from some guy who has extra money and cut out the middleman. So maybe better rates for you, better rates for me. But they're all built on this foundation of trust, because if I'm lending my money to someone, I need to know, okay, am I going to get my money back? Trust, a traditional notion of trust in commerce is maybe someone like Shufa or Experian in the US. And so kind of scoring people or saying, hey, based on what you've done in the past in your credit history, you're a number, and so there's some risk associated with you. So maybe we'll develop some kind of new score for people, or maybe Shufa will, instead of just scoring your credit, they'll say, hey, we're going to score you as an Airbnb host, or we're going to score you as a babysitter or something. But I don't believe that's what's going to happen. I think we're going to kind of see some new things develop, and that's actually what I'm working on is a way of, okay, how can we build trust between people using existing data out there that can kind of enable these peer-to-peer interactions that we've never seen before. And so I kind of think of it as like a passport and a digital passport. So an idea of, okay, it's your passport to all of these marketplaces, and combining that. So and kind of what we're working on is, what would that look like? And how do you build trust between people? So there are kind of three aspects that we think maybe be really important for building trust. So one thing is we want to know, okay, are you a real person? Are you who you say you are? Do you own this house? Do you own this product that you can sell to me? And maybe how would we do that? Or things like, verifying your address, verifying your cell phone number, your bank account, kind of hard data type things. And so that's kind of the base level. Are you a real person? Can I trust you to interact with a real person in that sense? Another thing that we think is really important is kind of a history of you. Can we show, if you're a real person and you're selling me something, or I'm going to let you stay with me, are you going to be a good person to stay with? In that sense, we can kind of aggregate a history of your footprints, so kind of losing this privacy, but maybe where have you stayed before? How many eBay transactions have you had? Has one of your connections on LinkedIn recommended you as a good guy to work with? And so there's actually now just more and more developing a history of you on the internet, and positive ways of saying, hey, this guy rated me 5 stars on eBay. I have 100 other people who will vouch for me in that sense too. So that history, I think, is also really important for building trust. But the last and kind of most important thing that we think is this idea of connections. And so everyone says, I trust my best friend with my life, or it's really about the people that you've gotten to know well, that you can trust. And so if you say, okay, on the internet, all of the people I know, I can find them anywhere, because LinkedIn or Facebook, there's some record of who I know. And so then maybe if I trust someone and I can see who that person is, then that person can also lead me to another person. So a friend of a friend kind of aspect, building this web of trust. And so because so many of our connections and so much of our history of people is online as well, we can also use kind of this aspect of knowing your network and seeing that anywhere you go. And so whether that's finding a friend of a friend to stay with on Airbnb, or maybe you're going to lend money to someone your LinkedIn connection has already reviewed, it's kind of, I think in the future you're going to see a lot of developments based upon the network of people that you know. So kind of to sum up, I guess we'd say or maybe losing privacy, but maybe that's just taking us back to where we were at the very beginning, living kind of Hudson caves of people that, maybe people are going to know everything about you, but maybe it's also going to be an opportunity to collaborate and really to connect with people in a new way that maybe happened 2,000 years ago. So I think it's going to be something really interesting and something I really believe is going to change the way our society and many economies kind of impact each other. So thanks so much for listening. And yeah, appreciate it.